Welcome to the Library Show. Well, you may think it's winter, and in fact it is, but music is abounding in the Lower Merion Library System. And where is it particularly? Well, it's at the Bala Library, it's at a program sponsored by the Bala Library. If you've been watching the Library Show for a while, you know that every year we get the privilege of interviewing Gilya Hodos, a music professor who devotes a tremendous number of her volunteer hours to the Bala Library. This year, there's going to be a concert on March 5th. Gilya, welcome to the Library Show.
Thank you so much, Lenore.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We also have Michael O'Grady. Michael is a community supporter of the Bala Library. Every library needs community supporters. Bala, with its terrific and well-known library program, has a wonderful cadre of folks who help out. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Well, happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let me deal with the sort of nuts and bolts of this. Gilya, why don't you tell the audience about exactly when and where and how they get tickets? We'll get that out front.
Okay, excellent. Well, the concert's going to be held on Sunday, March 5th at 1 p.m. That's a different time for us. Normally our Sunday concerts are at 2, but this particular concert will be at 1 p.m. And our concerts are held at the Merion Tribute House, which is at 382 Bala Avenue in Bala, Cynwyd. And we have an incredible program that will be featuring a trio called the Merion Trio in a program that is entitled Collegiality in Times of Isolation. So we'll talk a little bit more about the program. I think later on we're privileged to be joined with two of the other musicians of the Merion Trio. Rebecca Humphrey and Margaret Humphrey, cellist and violinist, and I'm actually the third part of that trio. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
One of the things I like about events at the Merion Tribute House Levermill Tribute House, is that the sound is so wonderful there. You're really flooded with the excellence of the sound of the musicians, and it's a very intimate and yet very professional experience. Professional because the musicians are professionals, like the three of you.
Well, it's one of the reasons we like performing there. It looks like a beautiful 19th century salon, the way the room is designed and the acoustics of the room. I have never met anyone who's performed there that didn't think the acoustics were just so gracious and warm to play in. It's really a very special place. And it's very special that we have that in Lower Merion. There are lots of other places where, where community concert series take place that are in a gym or they're in an auditorium that isn't necessarily designed for musical acoustics. So we're very fortunate to have that within our community.
It is a wonderful place, and it's a place not just for adults, but people can bring their children too. And I always like the look of a concert where the children are sitting on the floor in the front, closer to the instruments and really enjoying it.
Well, I think that's really the job of a community concert series, Lenore, is that its job is to connect people and community through shared art and shared goals by collaborating on musical experiences that enhance our neighborhoods and engage our audiences and really, above all, inspire our listeners. And that's something that I have worked very hard over the years to sort of curate a very inclusive and broadly accessible concert series. So, and we could not do that without our community volunteers, without our, this is a community sponsored concert series. I want to emphasize that. I mean, it's under the auspices of the Bala Library and they do support us, but it is a community concert series. And we really rely very heavily on that funding from the community itself.
Well, Michael, welcome. You as a representative of that community of volunteers and supporters really have a crucial role to play in this as well. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you've done in relation to the Bala concert series.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a little bit of a background, though I grew up in Philadelphia and left for a long time, but came back, but have lifelong been a fan of music, just fanatical. And it's everything from Bruce Springsteen to Mozart to Woody Guthrie. So I'm always in search of live performances. And when we found the music series here and went to our first one, I was just blown away. You mentioned, the intimacy. That's number one. That's one of the things that I think about why this is so valuable. The room size is large enough to have about 120 people in it. And you said kids gather around the instruments. They get up close and see how they're played. And the artist often will, explain the instrument to the kids, right? Or to the adults if we're curious. So it's a really rare opportunity to engage in a very intimate way with the music and the artists. And it's something that I have not experienced before. So our first time, we were sold. And for 11 years, we came to every single concert. And our kids grew up and they went from being 5 and 7 to 15 and 17, and they loved them. And no matter what the music was, they enjoyed the experience. So that number one is one of the most exciting things about the series. The other thing, as Gilya mentioned, is it's a community. It brings people together that, frankly, there's people there that I don't run into in my daily life, and so it's introduced us to new people, which is a really, really great thing to expand our notion and our understanding of the variety and diversity in our community. The other thing is the musicians. I am a big enough fan of music and have been around the block enough with musicians to know good musicians and absolutely world-class musicians. And Gilya, as the musical director, succeeds every single time in bringing in people who have biographies that are amazing, who have played with the greats in jazz, in folk, classical, and but also have great personality, great willingness to engage, and they bring energy and they bring passion. They explain in between the pieces what's going on with either the piece or the instrument. So it's almost like a music class, as well as a really fun social and artistic event. It's just absolutely unique. The programming, Gilya's programming is phenomenal.
Michael, let me ask you one question. I know that you're a community supporter of the Bala Library. Can you tell us, please, what you do in terms of community support?
That is a great question, Lenore. First of all, we support it financially. This is a series that is partially supported by the library, but every year the library or the series needed to go to the community and ask for additional funds in order to get the world-class musicians that Gilya brings in. So we've supported financially. We've also supported with our time. We show up early and we help set up the chairs. We set up the table for the refreshments afterwards. I go to the party store to get all the paper and paper products and cups and things like that. And we stand at the door and we welcome the community. This is a treasure that in this community, and our family is deeply invested in seeing it continue.
Well, kudos to you and kudos to your family for doing that. It sounds as if this is a gift that has made an impact on your kids, on your family, and you are making an impact on the community. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you being
on.
That's right.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with The Library Show. Welcome back to The Library Show. While we're here talking about the March 5th concert on behalf of the Bala Library, I should mention who's going to be playing. is the Merion Trio with the Humphrey sisters and Gilya Hodos. We have Becca and Margaret Humphrey who are here with us today. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about them and their music and what it means to play together in a trio for a long time. Margaret, let me start with you. How long have you been playing?
I started somewhere maybe third grade-ish.
Oh my.
And I grew up in a very musical family. My sister and I have been playing music since we were children. And then off we went to college, you know, our separate universities. And so when I finally moved back to Philadelphia, I had the privilege of joining the trio, who originally had a different violinist. So it's a great privilege to play with these two other women.
Isn't that great? And do you play a whole variety of music, or do you restrict yourselves to one area of music?
Becca and I play early music, but all music is new at one time. So when we interpret any piece of music, we try to think of it as brand new to us and trying to bring new inspiration to it.
I hate to sound like the music Philistine that I am, but what does early music mean?
So this would be 17th, 18th century music on original instruments. So that's our specialty, but we absolutely adore new music too.
Okay. We have, over the years of this show, covered quite a lot of concerts. We've covered jazz, we've covered country. And one that I remember particularly is one where the executive director of the libraries came in and played spoons along with the musician. So music can encompass a lot of different things, but this is certainly different. What are you going to be playing on March 5th?
Gilya, you want to speak to that?
So the program on March 5th is actually a program that's going to feature the music of women composers, and it's going to highlight the stories and the music of these women who had to overcome tremendous obstacles, whether it was like a gendered isolation or a professional isolation or a social isolation. And despite all those odds, they were really able to create community for themselves and to have their voices heard. And what's amazing is that each of these women, most of whom people really haven't heard of, their music has sort of fallen by the wayside, although one of them is really having a revival right now this particular year. I've seen she's been programmed a lot in the Philadelphia Orchestra. That's Louise Ferenc. But their music is just so beautiful and so deserving of, you know, the opportunity to be heard. We feel so fortunate to be able to play it.
That's terrific. And I don't want to ignore Becca. Becca, what would you like to say about your instrument and your playing over the years?
Well, as Margaret said earlier, she and I have been playing since we were about third grade, and we've had an extremely varied career, the two of us, and living apart. We were apart for about 25 years, and then when Margaret moved here back from Minnesota to Philadelphia, we started playing again. And what I love is that Gilya is our catalyst for bringing us together in such a different way. Margaret and I do a lot of playing of these early instruments, including viola da gamba, Baroque cello, and modern cello. And for me, it's just such a joy to play this modern 20th century literature with these two. It's been an amazing adventure for me.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that's a little bit out of left field. When you were in college, you went to separate colleges. Did you major in music or did you major in something totally different?
Well, I was a music therapy major at Oberlin College, and Margaret was she was a violin major at University of Michigan.
Okay, well, the reason I ask that is because sometimes parents say to me, I like watching the program because you talk about what people did when they were younger, and it gives me hope and ideas for what to do with my kids. Maybe kids who are musically talented, maybe they're not, maybe a college major shapes a life and maybe it doesn't. In your case, obviously, it was consistent with your life goals. Do you have a favorite composer that you like to play?
Oh, Bach is my favorite composer. Absolute, above all composers, it will always be Bach, but I love playing everything. Every single piece I play, I love.
That's terrific. It's a great thing. It's why you play music and why you enjoy what you do in life. Gilya, can I turn back to you for a moment and just talk about the structure of the concert? How do people get tickets for this? And you talked about the address where Levering Mill is, where the Levering Mill Tribute House is, but how do they get tickets?
Also, the beauty of this concert is that it is a free community concert. It is open to the public, and so we don't sell tickets in advance. We just invite people to come to the performance, and then we do really rely on donations that we receive from our audience members. Either, you know, if they would like to send it in advance to the library. A lot of people like to use, you know, some of their end of year tax donations. They like to give that to the library, and we would just ask that you would earmark any donations that you would make for the music program. That way it comes specifically to support this concert series. And as you know, as you alluded to when you were speaking with Michael O'Grady before, this series is just completely curated by volunteers. I volunteer my time to create the series. The library board, which steps up to help us in terms of many facets of the series, they're all volunteering their time. And so it's really important, I think, for a series like this. I mean, this series has been going on for more than 50 years now and consecutively, and we've really been supportive of the community. But at this point, you know, we know financially everything is more expensive. It's much harder for these community series to continue maintaining themselves, you know, just to run themselves. And we can't do it without the support of the community. So I'm really asking for the community to help us continue bringing this excellent programming, diverse programming. As we alluded to before, we've had the group you were alluding to where we had spoons was called Simple Gifts, and they were an outstanding folk group that plays all kinds of American folk instruments. We've had Latin music, we've had jazz musicians like Tony Maselli, we've had a very wide array of classical programming that we've brought in over the years. And I just think it's very important that, you know, we try to bring a diverse and inclusive series of music that will appeal to a wide range in our audience, in our community. And we would just like to see the community come out and help continue to support us financially so that we can continue to bring this excellent programming.
Gilya, you gave us the title of this concert, which is a fascinating title, but maybe you could tell us something about the composers of the music that will be played.
So this is a really interesting program. Each of the women whose music we're going to be highlighting had to overcome some very deep obstacle in order to sort of make their way professionally. One composer, for example, whose music we'll hear is Rebecca Clark. She wrote over 100 pieces in her lifetime, but only 20 of which were actually published. And by the time she died, none of them were even in print. She famously entered a competition with her music, and the judges couldn't believe that a woman could write a piece of that kind of caliber. And they actually conjectured that the name Rebecca Clark was a pseudonym under which a man had actually written the piece. So these are some of the gendered issues that composers had to face. Or another composer whose music we're going to feature is Nadia Boulanger. Nadia Boulanger was arguably, she tried in vain to win a very important prize, the Prix de Rome, and could never break the glass ceiling due to a whole bunch of misogyny that was going on and a lot of gender bias against women in terms of social isolation. And yet she turns out to be probably one of the most important composers. She essentially interacted with just about every 20th century composer in the world. They all converged to study with her, to hear what she had to say. So even though she couldn't break through some of this, she ended up having a tremendous impact. So we'll have a beautiful piece by her that we're going to feature. Two other composers include Germaine Taillefer, a woman who had tremendous success with one of her pieces, a piano concerto in particular. And even though it was featured by the Philadelphia Orchestra and premiered by her with the New York Philharmonic, she was still referred to as a girl composer. So a lot of issues getting, recognition for who she was. The last composer we'll play is a Louise Ferenc, and here's a woman who enjoyed tremendous success in her lifetime, but really fought hard to demand equal pay. Does that sound familiar? That we're still, we still fight about that today, and she was fighting that fight back in, the 1880s. So beautiful music by very talented composers, and I hope people will enjoy listening to this music.
Well, for all of you who are sitting at home, you may be wondering, it's February. This program is not happening until March 5th, the program meaning the musical concert. Well, I hope you'll use the month of February to tell your friends and neighbors about this wonderful event. Bring them with you, bring your family, make it a multi-generational event. Each of you is a publicist for this event, just as we here on the Library Show are helping to publicize this wonderful part of our Lower Merion community. So I hope you'll use this month to tell people, prepare them, and remind them that they have two things to do. Number one, come and enjoy on March 5th at 1 p.m. I'll repeat that, it's not 2 p.m., the usual starting time. And also make a donation. It can be cash. I assume you'll take cash, Gilya?
The
Okay.
library will take any form of donation that you want to make.
They'll take cash, and plus you can also bring a check, and you can increase the size of your check if you decide to pay more when you get there. So I hope you'll turn out. Parking is definitely doable in that neighborhood. Hopefully in March, the weather will be good. You won't have to climb over snowbanks. I can't guarantee anything, of course, but even if it's snowing, it doesn't matter. You'll enjoy it that much more. All right, but thank you very much, Gilya. Thank you, Becca, Margaret, Michael. I appreciated your time, and I hope you'll join us on Sunday, March 5th at 1 p.m. at the Merion Tribute House for a wonderful concert, and support it. Thanks. Join us next month for the Library Show.